It's the very first time that we are joined by the same guest for the second time in a row. And I couldn't be more excited about that because Veronica Lloyd has had an incredible journey over the last probably 18 months. And it's literally just scratching the surface. Now, for most of us, 2022 has been quite interesting to say the least. And to be honest, I can't think of anyone who has been impacted by it professionally and or personally and being challenged by a lot of disruption and a lot of challenging situations. And obviously in 2023 there's a lot ahead of us, but at the same time that also means that we can create our own opportunities when we are seeing them and embracing them for what they are. So the question is, what have been some of the big trends in 2022 that we've been seeing, and also how to prepare for it for the year to come as an individual and as a business? And this is exactly what we are discussing today with Veronica. Veronica, thanks so much for being here again. Give us a bit of an update. What have you been up to since we spoke last?
Sounds great. So since we spoke last, to tell people a little bit the background, I wasn't employed in a new country as a mom of two in Australia, where also English is not my first language. So I had quite a few challenges on the table. And so when I started to look at the trends and what was happening in the market, the words that I kept on hearing was the Great Resignation, quiet quitting, toxic cultural or company environment, Web3, like all these different trends. And it was quite overwhelming, to be honest. But at the same time, what I realized is that whenever there's a challenge, you can use your mindset to turn it into an opportunity. And so for me, I started to look at all these things as opportunities. What I mean by these is, in my case, for example, I didn't have a brand anymore because I used to work for big brands like Apple and Estee Lauder, and I always relied a lot on those brands. And when I was working there, it was great. But when I didn't have a brand anymore, I realized that I was solo. I didn't really have my own trademark. And so one trend that I've been seeing is that a lot of people who have been in a similar situation, especially when you have been leaving these big brands that were always endorsing you, you are just on your own. You are a book without a cover. And I saw this as an amazing opportunity. So for me, one of the big trends that I've been working on specifically for the past 5 months has been to build my own personal brand. I don't just mean LinkedIn, I mean more holistically. What is your brand and how you position yourself to the right people, and you give yourself visibility to the people that your stakeholders really. So that's a huge one.
Absolutely. And, it's been so exciting to see and follow your journey from where you've come from, and nobody knew of you vice versa. And you being a completely new country, wanting to reinvent your career, wanting plus at the same time also having to reinvent your career because the previous roles are gone and the businesses were based in different countries. And you've taken this adversity as an opportunity to do something bigger and beyond your previous title. So it's been very fascinating to see, and also the progression that you have made. You have specialized in DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion for a good reason. Can you talk us a little bit through why is this such a big topic? Like, everyone talks about it, but I don't think that everyone actually understands what it really means and the benefits of it. So can you give us a bit of a background as to why DEI is a passion of yours and it's important for us?
So why it's a passion for me? That's a very personal question. And it's because I've lived in 9 countries, and every single time I moved to one of these countries, I was the outsider. I was the person who was excluded because I didn't know the language, I didn't know the culture. And so for me, it's a topic that is very, very close to my heart. Coming into Australia, that came to the next level because not only I was a foreigner, I speak English, of course, but it's not my first language. I came as a mom of 2 who was by myself at the time because my husband was unfortunately left behind. And so I had all these different challenges. And what I realized when I thought about myself and looking at all these challenges is that I'm not alone. I'm really not alone. Most people, they feel excluded at some point of their life in some respect. Whether you are the only woman in the room, whether you are the only foreigner that arrived in a country, whether you're a person with a disability that is not able to access a meeting just like everybody else. And so I realized that diversity is a topic that really touches us emotionally at a much bigger level. And if it doesn't affect you because you're lucky to be in a very privileged position, chances are it affects someone that you know, your wife, your kids, your friends. And so it's really a topic that is a very human topic that impacts everyone. So that's more on my personal cause and why I'm an advocate, but it goes deeper than that. Companies they don't only have to do it because it's the right thing to do, which is a major argument, I would say, but it's also the most profitable thing to do. Studies show that when you have diverse teams that work inclusively, it's not only about hiring your diversity, but it's about making sure they work together inclusively, they perform better. You have a 30% better performance. You have more innovation, because if you have more diversity of thought in the way that you develop a product, in the way that you're writing a communication, in the way that you're looking at your future strategy, then you have more IQ. And more IQ means that you're overperforming.
Absolutely. And also, if we tap into the Maslow hierarchy of needs, after physiological needs and safety, physical safety, the next part is belonging. And as you said, we all kind of feel excluded if we are in the quote unquote wrong kind of environments. And, so many companies say we need to have more female leaders and so forth. But at the same time, they're not necessarily preparing for that. Like, they still have the same structures and rules and regulations that it worked for a pure or mainly masculine executive team, but it doesn't quite work for female leaders with kids or with disabilities in any shape or form. So we all have to rethink. And then, you also tapped into the great resignation or the great realization or the quiet quitting or the lying flat. Like, there's so many terms out there for it. And as a company, if we want to stay competitive, we need to tap into different types of talents, not just the traditional professional who came from a certain background or education, but also how else can they look at a problem from a different angle and perspective and come up with a new solution. This is true profitability of DEI, I would say.
And one more thing, and you touched upon it. So I've talked about the right thing to do, the human cause behind it. I've talked about the P&L side of it, why you should do it for your company, for your results. There's also the cost of opportunity. What happens when you don't? You fall behind because your competitors are seeing that, and they are seeing the power of diversity. So if you're falling behind in the DEI space, you're really missing out. And that's something that I want to call out as well, is not only the benefit, but also you are missing out.
Absolutely. And speaking of missing out in those opportunity costs, looking into 2023, what are the trends that you see are most impacting individuals and or businesses also? Like, what do we need to keep in mind that we can then prepare ourselves for what's ahead?
So when it comes to individuals, I think a big trend that I see, and you can see on LinkedIn, the amount of new creators and personal branding experts that you have every day popping up. I think that that's a big one, making sure that you're creating something that is sustainable. That is your brand. And no matter where you go, companies, countries, that stays with you. So I think people are really investing in having a brand that really reflects who they are, not only for work, but holistically as an individual. So I think that's a huge trend that I'm seeing. The second one is that your personal development continues. You can't stay where you are. Like, the status quo doesn't exist. Like, either you're progressing or you're falling behind, and doing nothing means that you're falling behind. And what I mean by this is that you have to stay up to date. You have to stay relevant. For example, I'm not even talking only about your industry. Web3, blockchain, metaverse, all of this is not only the Bitcoin. It's much bigger than that. It's impacting the way that retailers are operating, the way that companies are working. Advertisement is impacting everything. And so having investment in your own development beyond just what you do as a technical expert, I think that's huge. And I've been doing it myself. So I'm not just saying, I've done a bunch of courses on Web3 and blockchain, because it's important to understand where the economy is going. So I think number two, that's super important. And number three is the economy of relationship. I think we are realizing that it comes down to who you know and how you are known by whom. And as you have said many times, your network is your net worth. And people are realizing that when you want to find a job, when you want to get clients, when you want to get a referral, the power of people is huge. And networking in the broader sense, it's not just how many connections I have on LinkedIn, is who is my network outside? How can I maybe talk to friends about collaborating for a specific project? So I see this merge a little bit between what used to be like our personal network and what is our professional network, and how there's really this new mindset of there's opportunities everywhere. So let's make the most of it.
Absolutely. And, I couldn't agree with those three main points anymore, because they're literally the foundation and they're not getting old. Like, it doesn't matter if there's a new platform popping up or a new way of communication. It doesn't matter. It all comes down to the fundamentals, and that being you being in control over how you want to be perceived, and with that, the opportunities that are presenting to you, then ongoing learning. No one is as interested in your progression, in your success than you are. So if you don't take control over that and make lifelong diverse learning a priority, you're already behind. And finally, not just who you know, but who knows of you. And there's also the saying, who you know, your network, it's kind of your reputation, but who knows of you, that's true influence. And this is also where the creator economy comes into place. Now, before we pressed record, you mentioned an opportunity that actually came to you. Would you mind expanding on that a little bit further? Because that's just such a perfect example of what happens and what can happen when you put yourself out there.
So to be very honest, I had a lot. I had a lot of consultancy gigs come to me through LinkedIn, a lot of different things. But the one that I thought was amazing is one of my followers. I don't like that term, like a connection that I made through social media, so through Medium and LinkedIn. He saw the work that I was doing on personal branding, and we connected, and there was like a really great synergy. He was recently fired from the company where he's working at, and he's a website developer, fantastic website developer, 25 years experience, hundreds of websites. He came to me and he said, hey, I would love to propose you something. How about I help you with your website because it's cute, he said. It's not really converting, so I think you have some opportunities. And in return, I would love to have some coaching and guidance for you in terms of how to get started in this journey of building my brand, because I have no idea. So from here, hopefully my cute website will become a killer website, and we'll be able to put him in the spotlight, so that he really starts to flourish in his new freelance business. And that opportunity just came through networking and being out there, and just being present every day.
Oh my God, I love this example so much, because it's also a testament that you don't necessarily have to have official credentials or years of experience, or, the tick in a box that you are qualified to do so, because you're not qualified, quote unquote, as a personal brand strategist, but at the same time, you live and breathe it. You do it for yourself. You get results for yourself. And this is what people are seeing. And so many times people don't want to put themselves out there because they're seen as the person, like an imposter syndrome comes up, that they don't know enough or somebody else is much better. But we just want somebody who is 1, 2, 3 steps ahead of us, not 500, because that's too intimidating anyway. And obviously there are great synergies. And when we're look into the future of work, predictions also say we are, as individuals, more responsible for finding, designing, and delivering the work. So it doesn't matter if you're an employee working in a corporation or running your own business. How can you become commercially viable to a decision maker? So we need to be more entrepreneurial, whether we are in an organization or not, because companies are becoming leaner and flatter, and that means there are less opportunities to progress and move on. So if we can't prove our worth, quote unquote, and also investing into ongoing learning, the chances that we eventually made redundant, or the role is no longer required, or the skill set, is quite high in this day and age. Would you add anything to that in terms of what does the future of work look like from your own experience, also working with some of the largest brands in the world?
So I had a lot of thought about this, because people are talking about those who did the quiet quitting and the great resignation, and those who left. I've been thinking a lot about those who stayed. What does that look like when you feel like a survivor? When the colleague who is sitting next to you had to pack a box, probably in just a few hours, how does that person feel? I don't think that has been discussed a lot. I haven't seen a lot of conversation about that. And so if I'm a company and I know that you've been through this experience, and you have lost your colleagues, and you might even fear that you're next, because maybe you are, I think you have to address that. I think you have to really reset the way that you are looking at how individuals are working with each other. Really make sure that the people who stayed have a voice. What do we need to do to make sure that this is working? And that's where diversity, equity, and inclusion comes to play. It's not just the companies thinking that this works because they have done it for so many years. It's probably taking a different approach because this situation is new. So it's something that has not been lived before. So understanding how you're going to manage that new workforce, I think it's key. A second trend that I see as well is the need for flexibility. I've seen how a lot of individuals, first after COVID, and now with everything that has been happening with the Great Resignation and so on, we want flexibility. And I'm not only talking about flexibility of working from home, which is just an example, but flexibility also in what does your career development look like? If I'm someone who is a product manager, but I'm passionate about public speaking, let's talk about that. How can we make sure that we're bringing your passions into place? And the whole thing of, oh, but we can scale these, we're a big corporate organization, it wouldn't work. It's not about it wouldn't work. It's about we will try it and we will see and we will have a different approach. And that's difficult because that's a change in mindset, especially for large organizations that are very used to you are A and this is your box and your product management job. You're not a public speaker, so that's a different job. And this mentality is something that is the hardest part to change.
Absolutely. And I think this also taps into both responsibilities, the talent, but also the leader. So as a talent, I need to be aware, what are my strengths? What are my weaknesses? What are my passions? What is it actually that I want to do, rather than relying on my line manager or HR to tell me what's next, because who knows what's next? And at the same time, as a leader, if I don't have, like what we've introduced with a few teams that we're working with is what we call stay interviews. So everyone knows of exit interviews and we are asking, why are you leaving? But we're not asking, why are you staying? So curating or co-creating is probably a better word, culture, and saying, what do we like about staying here? What could be improved? I think this open dialogue requires a different kind of leadership. It's not just do so because I tell you so and I'm in the power position, but also what do you think about it, and creating this diversity of thoughts and approach to challenging situations and events that are happening more and more. Now, when we switch gear a little bit in terms of leadership, what are some of the tips that you would give a leader in this current work environment, which is very complex, and we are facing those kind of situations that we had never experienced before? What kind of advice would you give them to prepare their leadership style for this next world of work?
I think first of all is have the ability to listen and to actively listen to what your employees are saying. So have those one-to-one conversations, have those coffee chats, like really be an inclusive leader. And inclusive really means including people's perspectives. I think that's really, really important. The second piece is understand, how am I going to help the individual in front of me become a better version of themselves? And that's not just the next promotion, but how do we make use of all your superpowers, of all your skills, of all your potential to help you grow and make sure that you see my company as a platform for you to continue flourishing. And all of these, of course, come with programs in leadership development, a lot of coaching. So I think all of that part is really important, and really empowering that individual to open new ways in the organization. So not necessarily having a past traditional way for that person to develop, but really help find the right path. And it goes back to the personal branding. What do you stand for? How do you want to be known for? Like everything goes together. It's not two separate things. And so how do you actually create synergies? And that's how the company can also win for an individual who is really has a very strong personal brand, has a very strong, really knows what she or he or they stand for.
Absolutely. And also, it comes down to getting the best out of others. It starts with getting the best out of yourself. And every single time it comes down to the self-awareness piece, because in a second we are aware, we can act on it with more intention rather than just reacting to whatever happens to us. One of my clients asked me the other day, what would you describe my leadership style as? And we've worked together for quite a while. And I said, and he said it would be a servant leadership style, that he would say. I was like, well, you don't have just the one leadership style, and neither should you. You're working with 5 generations. You need to be flexible. You need to adjust to what your team is requiring from you to get the best out of them. So this is your job as a leader, to listen, to sit back, to ask more questions than having all the answers. You need to rethink your role here, even though he's been with the organization for 25 years. And I think this shift from the IQ, how much I know, to the EQ, how much does my knowledge benefit you, and how can I get you on board more? That is, I think, a big challenge, because it also requires a identity shift from us. And you also mentioned a lot more coaching. which means asking questions, not just saying, oh, do it X, Y, Z way, because we're facing those challenges that we have never faced before. There's no previous experience to that. How would you help leaders and emerging leaders to overcome this, oh, but I don't know the answer. How can I step into the more senior role? Or how can I lead a team through adversity when I don't know what the answer is? What tip would you give them?
So for me, I think that the secret of coaching is not knowing everything, is not having all the answers. In fact, is being vulnerable enough to saying, I haven't been through this, but I can ask the right questions. I can guide you through the process. I can tell you what I would do if I had to face that situation today. But in the end, even if I had the answer, it's not about my answer. It's about helping you as an individual with those open-ended questions find your answer, because it's going to be different for you than it is for me. And also, I would like to build on the topic that you brought up about the different styles of leadership. I did have an aha moment when I was working at Apple, and I used to think as well that I had my leadership style, and this is what I was, and I'm a very collaborative, supportive person. And then I did a training that was called situational leadership, and it completely changed my mindset, because the basics of it says that the leadership is not about you. It's about the individual that you have in front of you in the situation. So someone who is new in your team might have very different needs than someone who is already a senior person in the team. And so you as a leader, you have to learn to flex those muscles. And that's where it's really important to have that EQ to read the person, to read the situation, because otherwise it can be a disaster if someone who is like very confident and already very experienced in a role, and you go with a very assertive and directive style, even if that's your preferred styles. Vice versa, if someone is really new in the team and you're like, great, I trust you, go for it, it can be a little bit overwhelming. So I think having that EQ goes back to the coaching, and it's really a key of leadership.
Oh, I love that you mentioned the situational leadership, because it's so true. In the second we want to make anything happen, if we want to get the buy-in for a new project, or we want to get the budget, or we want to get a new hire, or we want to get our idea across, it doesn't matter. We need to be seen as a trusted authority in that space, whether they've got the title or not. And it comes down to reading the room and having and applying situational awareness. What does it take for my idea to get the approval? Well, what is in it for others? So, switching the context, that's really important. Now, speaking of trusted authority, you have been part of the latest intake of the trusted authority cohort, and honestly, you've been a star student. We learned something, you applied and reported back all the results, all the lessons learned. Like, you were always very transparent, what worked, what didn't work, what you want to do and not so. So very excited to announce what's happening in January. Very excited to say that you are joining forces with me to share your own experiences, but also to help others going through this process from your own experience, but also from your coaching experience. Can you talk us a little bit through what is coming up for everyone who is listening to this podcast, and obviously who is following us on LinkedIn?
Absolutely. So first, I'm going to give a little summary on this amazing course that I did with Petra. So it was a 10 weeks course. Everything was virtual, and we had different people from different countries, from different industries. It was super, super actionable. So we had homework that I hadn't had for many, many years. And it really helped me find my voice, find my message. As I was saying, it's not only about having 1 million followers on LinkedIn, it's bigger than that. It's how you position yourself. I personally saw amazing results from it. I have leads. I have people coming and offering to do my website. Like, I have had all these things. And I figured, actually, I want to use this experience to help other people who might have been in a similar situation. Because don't forget, 5 months ago, I wasn't employed. I didn't have a voice. I didn't have a personal brand. And maybe there are people who are listening to this who are in this situation. So Petra and I are joining forces to run and host the same program that I participated for 10 weeks. So we are going to do that in February. We're going to have limited seats, because we want to make sure that is really a small group where we can give very, very specific coaching and follow up. And we're really super excited, because it's really bringing a methodology that is strong, that is robust, that is really very meticulous. And I can see your very meticulous side in the way that the program was built, with also the experience of someone who has been there and who can say, this has worked, this hasn't worked for me. Maybe it works for you, but it really helps when you're able to translate all of this theory into something that is really practical. And so I could not think of a better partner to join a personal branding program like this one.
And again, vice versa. You've been such a fresh breath of air. I think that's the saying. And you know, it's the testament that it's a method, a process, a framework that can be applied, and also being contextual about it. Like, how would I apply this knowledge in my industry, in my profession, in my current situation? So it does require some EQ, but at the same time, there are steps to follow that we can actually make the transition from being the best kept secret and knowing it all and still not getting the recognition to eventually becoming the go-to trusted authority in whatever industry or profession we want to be known for. We've got different credibility methods depending on where we are, and we are also doing a few LinkedIn lives. So this is a new way for us to also connect with the community. So make sure you follow us and you connect with us on LinkedIn. I put the links obviously in the show notes that everyone can prepare themselves, because we are starting already second week of January and we're doing a weekly LinkedIn live. So questions, comments, feedback, more than welcome. And we are kicking off 2023 with a bang.
Absolutely. I couldn't think of a better way to start the new year.
Now you are heading back to Hong Kong. Give us a quick update, what's happening in your personal life, and then we wrap up.
So personal life, after a year locked abroad, as I like to say, because I ended up in Australia due to COVID regulation. I'm going back to Hong Kong to be reunited with my husband, with my dog. And so it's an amazing opportunity also work-wise, because I'll be able to really have APAC lens when we're looking at personal branding, when we're looking at all these exciting topics that we were just talking about. And one amazing thing, I did talk about the importance that I see in freelancing, flexibility really. And for me, my vision is, it doesn't matter if I'm in Australia, if I'm in Hong Kong, if I'm in Spain, which I'm going to be very soon. My business and my personal brand is traveling with me. And that's a message that I want to send. If this sounds like something that you would like, be working on a beach in Bali or being in Spain for the new year, it's possible. You just have to change your mindset and start somewhere.
Absolutely. Oh, honestly, I'm excited. So again, thank you so much for being part of the cohort, for being part of my life, for being part of the show. And yeah, looking forward to continuing this journey in 2023.
Thank you, Petra, and thank you, everyone.